Hey everyone, welcome. If you're tuning in today, it means you're ready to roll up your sleeves and do some real historical detective work. In this explainer, we're going to dig into one of the most fundamentally transformational eras in human history, the period from 1491 to 1607. But look, we aren't just going to sit here and memorize dry facts today. No way. We're going to take raw historical evidence and learn exactly how to construct a rock-solid, historically defensible claim. Basically, we are turning pure information into powerful argumentation. Here's our roadmap for today. We've got complex native societies, the great transatlantic collision, clashing cultural worldviews, sorting the historical evidence, and finally crafting a defensible claim. Let's jump right in. All right, Section 1, Complex Native American Societies, setting the scene before 1492. This era absolutely shatters that old misconception that North America was just some blank slate before European arrival. Not even close. As native populations migrated and settled across the vast expanse of North America over time, they didn't just survive out there, they totally thrived. They developed distinct and increasingly complex societies. And how'd they do it? By ingeniously adapting to, and honestly transforming their wildly diverse environments. We're talking about major, game-changing innovations in agriculture that sustained huge populations, highly specific and localized resource use depending on exactly where they lived, and the development of these incredibly intricate, layered social structures. So this is our baseline evidence right here, a continent already rich with diverse, highly complex civilizations. Moving right along to Section 2, the Great Transatlantic Collision, the Catalyst. Okay, so the absolutely crucial thing to grasp here is the sheer unbelievable scale of what happens next. The true inciting incident of our historical investigation is the contact among Europeans, Native Americans, and Africans, and this resulted in what we call the Columbian Exchange. Now, this wasn't just some simple trade agreement. It was a massive, completely unprecedented exchange of demographic, economic, and social changes. It was an event that literally reshaped the trajectory of multiple continents all at once. The Columbian Exchange really serves as the central engine of causation for this entire historical period. And these early interactions didn't just make a splash. They sent massive shockwaves rippling across both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. The expansion of Europeans into the Western Hemisphere definitely wasn't a one-way street of impact. Over in Europe, this expansion generated really intense social, religious, political, and economic competition as nations furiously vied for wealth and dominance. Meanwhile, over in the Americas, the development of the Spanish Empire and the ongoing Columbian Exchange resulted in extensive demographic, economic, and social changes. We're talking about entire populations shifting, economies being completely rewired, and societies being permanently altered. When you're gathering evidence for an argument, let me tell you, these multi-layered impacts are an absolute goldmine, which perfectly sets up Section 3, Clashing Cultural Worldviews, Divergent Realities. Because think about it, beyond the exchange of physical things like goods, diseases, and populations, there was a profound collision of ideas. In their interactions, Europeans and Native Americans asserted drastically divergent worldviews across 5 really critical areas: religion, gender roles, family structures, land use, and power dynamics. So what one society viewed as just the natural, obvious way to utilize land or organize a family, the other side often saw as completely foreign or even totally unacceptable. Grasping this deep ideological clash is absolutely vital because it explains so much of the underlying tension, the conflict, and the eventual historical outcomes of this whole era. So, that brings us to a bit of a crossroad in our explainer. We've explored complex native societies, the massive demographic shifts of the Columbian Exchange, and these intense clashes over fundamental worldviews. That is a literal mountain of historical facts. The real question is, how do we actually make sense of all these historical effects? How do we transition from just knowing a bunch of stuff happened to actually acting as historical detectives who can organize this chaos into a really compelling argument? Let's get highly practical with Section 4, Sorting the Historical Evidence. Organizing the chaos. To make sense of everything from 1491 to 1607, we're going to use a really structured 4-step methodology. Step 1, you brainstorm the effects. You literally just look back at your notes and list out everything you can think of it happened because of the Transatlantic Voyages. Step 2, you categorize those scattered random facts by broader historical themes. Step 3, you force yourself to prioritize by ranking the top 5 most important effects. And finally, Step 4, you synthesize that prioritized data to draft a thesis. It's just a brilliant way to filter out the noise and find the true historical signal. Picture this. You've just brainstormed this huge list of effects, stuff like the introduction of new diseases or the arrival of new animals like horses. But leaving them as a random bulleted list, that isn't very helpful for building an argument. So you map them onto established analytical themes, like the 8 AP U.S. history themes, for example. You take new diseases and animals from your raw brainstorm list, and you move it straight into a thematic bucket, such as environment and geography. By doing this, you instantly elevate a basic fact into a solid piece of analytical data. You immediately begin to see that some themes were affected way more by this era than others. And finally, we hit Section 5, crafting a defensible claim, delivering the final verdict. Now we've reached the ultimate goal of all this heavy lifting. You don't just want an opinion here. You want a historically defensible claim. A really strong thesis statement for this type of historical argumentation is typically a two-sentence structure. The first sentence boldly identifies which specific theme was most impacted by the event, in our case today, the Transatlantic Voyages. Then the second sentence steps right up and backs up that claim by providing specific, historically accurate examples as evidence. It's clean, it's structured, and honestly, it proves you actually know your stuff. Let's check out a flawless execution of this. The transatlantic voyages of the Europeans most affected the environment of America. For example, the Columbian Exchange introduced new diseases and animals. Notice the architecture of this claim. It doesn't try to be everything to everyone and say everything about everything. It makes a definitive, targeted choice, isolating the environment as the most affected theme based on that prioritized evidence we talked about. Then, it instantly anchors that claim with the specific examples of new diseases and animals brought over via the Columbian Exchange. This is exactly what a clear thesis statement looks like. It immediately helps the reader understand the exact historical argument you're about to build. And honestly, that is the true power of mastering this process. By understanding the complex societies before 1492, the incredible shockwaves of the Columbian Exchange, and those profound cultural clashes, you gather all your raw material. By sorting, categorizing, and ranking that material, you refine it. And by crafting a structured thesis, you forge a genuinely compelling argument. A clear thesis statement is literally the absolute best tool you have to help readers understand complex history. So, I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. Now that you have the methodology to turn scattered, raw evidence into an ironclad argument, what claim will you build next? Keep analyzing, keep organizing, and I'll see you in the next explainer.